Welcome to today's Financial Security for All Community of Practice webinar. We're so excited to have our colleagues here from South Dakota State University today. The topic is Organize This, Explore, Adapt, and Implement for Local Impact. So they're going to be sharing a program with us today. Many of you already know Lorna. She is part of the financial security community. She's Family Resource Management Field Specialist with South Dakota Extension. She says that her programming focuses on empowering individuals to increase financial confidence, and her mission is to educate consumers about managing resources, specifically finances, to improve their well-being. And then joining us is her South Dakota colleague, Lisi Brown. Lisi has her master's degree in gerontology. She's the gerontology field specialist with South Dakota State University Extension. And she said that she is passionate about enhancing quality of life as we age. We're very excited to have them here. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Lorna Saboe-Wounded Head and Lisi Brown from South Dakota State University Extension.
Laura, thanks for our introductions. We are excited to be able to present this program for all of you today, Organize This, and I thank all of you for taking time to attend our program today. So for Organize This, the impetus of it is understanding that the administrative work associated with legal and financial planning is daunting. Real human emotions come up when people are faced with maybe incapacity, a declining health, or even end of life or having to make end of life decisions. So for this session, extension professionals will be able to learn more about the development of the Organize This program. In addition to, we will share with you information about an upcoming facilitator certification and training. So what we definitely are, this program is a collaboration between 3 states, but also then different content areas. So the focus of this program is legal concept that applies across state lines. So we have worked, or we've developed this program with our colleague with Nebraska Extension, who is a ag business specialist, and then also working with North Dakota State University Extension with the gerontology specialist that's there. So as we're working on this program, this means not a big emphasis is on topics like titling property or assets or using trusts to protect assets. This program is designed to help increase knowledge about the fundamental concepts around caregiving and death. So the overarching goal of our time together today is to introduce the Organize This program, to discuss plans to expand the availability of the program in 2027, as well as the facilitator training being offered this fall. So our topics today will include the program development and our explanation of the pilot that we implemented, what we are offering for 2026, our plans for 2027, and then some suggestions or strategies to be able to adapt this program within your audience and your state. So each person will be affected by one or more of the difficult life experiences that are listed on the screen. As a result of these experiences, another person may need to assume some responsibility for an adult's medical and financial decisions. But what comes to mind when you think about needing someone to handle medical or financial decisions for you or your loved one? So, you know, what comes to mind for you when you hear that question? And then another question, have you ever had to help make medical or financial decisions for someone or seeing someone go through something like that, and thinking, just kind of reflecting on what that experience might be for you. From a personal perspective, I did have to deal with these questions a number of years ago when my dad was sick, and it was a very unexpected illness for him that did result in his passing. And these conversations had not been had prior to his getting sick, and so we had to make some decisions and hoped that we were making decisions based on his wishes, because he was not able to contribute to the conversation. And then that was definitely a learning moment for my mom, who then immediately made sure she got the estate information together, kind of just the things that she had to deal with in settling my dad's estate, then helped her to now be prepared and well prepared herself. And then my other family members then are very aware of, what questions came to mind. So even thinking about a time when someone had to step in and make some important decisions for another adult, there can be challenges and there can be concerns, and it can even be a situation where a decision cannot be made because you don't know for sure what the individual would what their response to that decision would be. So too often people assume that once someone begins managing medical and financial decisions, that they have to continue in that role until death. And this role can be temporary, ending once the person recovers from the difficult life experience. So a note about some chronic disease is some participants may object to the idea that, that chronic diseases are a fact of life. While we're learning a great deal about chronic diseases, we need to be a bit innovative to see meaningful declines in rate and what will likely take time for this to occur. So another aspect of making these kind of final decisions is the emotional aspect of it. Emotions come up when planning for someone to take over your financial and medical affairs. Some sensitive issues do need to be confronted. So things like choosing a decision maker could possibly bring up family tension, especially if there are more than one person who could possibly be chosen for that. Depending on your family relationships, it could create some conflict. Planning forces people to really think about their declining health. It also, conversations about care connects to thoughts of death, and depending on individuals' experiences, this could be a difficult conversation or one that no one even wants to start the conversation. And then the unequal distribution of assets creates tension, and then also can create other difficult conversations. So this reality really informed how our team developed the Organize This legal and financial must-haves. So for the program, we decided to have create a program that was over 10 months program. Instead of just doing a kind of a one-time session, we wanted it to be a longer period of time. So we have 4 90-minute virtual sessions. We've only offered this program virtually. Well, we're in the process of maybe some in-person, but we originally, for our pilot, offered it virtually. This aligns with kind of New Year's resolutions, tax seasons, as well as holidays. Our call to the action at the end of the program was to help individuals, or help the participants would be able to find appropriate time to discuss with family and their fiduciary when they might gather together for holiday season, this may sound morbid to have kind of these types of conversations at holidays, but however, there is value in in-person discussions because of the nature of this topic. So we had 4 virtual sessions, and then in between each virtual session, we offered office hours. So there were 3 of us who were the main facilitators. And the way we scheduled office hours is we just identified one day a month or 1 day during the month that we would be available to meet. We set up a Calendly invite, and then we used that as our scheduler. We sent out an email with the link to the Calendly, and anyone who was interested in meeting with us one-on-one then just signed up for a time to meet. And this was an opportunity to discuss maybe more sensitive or more personal issues. A lot of times people have, just those unique situations, and instead of explaining those in a large group, it's easier to discuss those one-on-one because not, every answer can apply to everybody's situation. And then it just really helped provide some individual support. And for the participants who did participate in office hours, many came with very specific questions, and we went through those questions. Others really just wanted to meet to just talk about maybe how to get started with the program, or even just we provided some motivation for them to be able to really get started. So our delivery method, our delivery model really helped to promote some manageable progress. During each program session, participants completed a SMART goal, developed some action steps, kind of just setting them a goal to make some progress on getting organized with this information. Being able to spread out the sessions really allows for some real life application. Getting our papers organized isn't always something we can do in a weekend, and being able to kind of break it up into smaller bits and pieces was helpful for the participants. It improved kind of retention of the information because we could take a topic and spend that 90 minutes on that topic, and then instead of having to present everything in kind of like bite-sized pieces of information, allow time to process sensitive decisions, and it really helped to enhance the access for the individualized support, and then it really encouraged sustained engagement. We were able to, with a year-long or a 10-month program, about 2/3 of our participants, when we offered it in 2025, kind of stuck with us and continued to be engaged throughout the 10 months. So we use the term fiduciary to emphasize the legal and ethical responsibilities a person has to act in someone else's best interest. Understanding that helps the program participants choose the right person, set clear expectations for their role, and avoid any problems later. We scheduled our sessions, as I said, 4 different sessions. So in January, we really covered in depth the types of fiduciaries and their roles in caregiving and death. And then we talked about the documents and the information the fiduciaries may need access to. For this session, we did invite an estate planning attorney to do about a 20-minute presentation to make sure that we were providing that accurate, reliable information. During our April session, we talked about managing technology and digital assets. In July, we reviewed the information about fiduciaries and how maybe questions to ask in order to identify a professional, the different professionals that you can have work with you. We talked about credit reports and freezing those reports. And then in October, We discussed the communication with the relatives and fiduciaries, and the legal, financial, and emotional costs of maybe disorganization or missing legal documents. For this session, we invited our estate attorney to come back and address some of those topics. For the April sessions, our office facilitators were the presenters. I already mentioned we had our attorney, and so she talked specifically about fiduciaries and how to name fiduciaries, and then a little bit more detail of conservator and guardianship. The goal of these sessions were to help participants understand really who needs access to their documents and information. For session 1, that was our goal. For session 2, it focused on what happens when adults don't name a fiduciary for those financial and medical issues. Another thing that we provided our participants was a binder that had a wide variety of resources. We chose to give everyone physical copies of all the resources. Our audience was intended to be adults age 40 and over, and we felt that that was the type of audience that would really appreciate having the actual physical copies of our content rather than just electronic copies. We organized the binder, the resources based on each setting.
I think emphasizing that we relied on curated resources is huge, because the truth is there's tons of existing documents out there. So Organize This really is built on curating existing educational resources and using that to guide the education that we provide to participants over the 10 months.
Yep, so we have a lot of resources from other states, from their extension. We did develop a few. We'll show you what those are in a minute. But yeah, we really relied on content that was already developed, that was research-based and reliable. So for the objectives specifically for the Organize This program, that the participants would walk away from was their ability to compare and contrast the legal situations and outcomes related to family caregiving and probate, to define and differentiate the duties and responsibilities of different types of fiduciaries, to identify documents and information that a fiduciary might need, explain and compare organization strategies for important documents and information, explore strategies for managing technology and digital assets during life and death, and then to discuss that professional support. By the end of the program, we would hope that the participants feel more comfortable and be more informed consumers, and really just feel comfortable making those plans and having those discussions about end of life and caregiving decisions. As I already mentioned, kind of our target audience were adults age 40 and older. We did not ask people's age when they registered, so anyone was able to register, but we were able to focus on this. Individuals who were maybe providing care to family members were another target. Adults with children who, where as the adult, they may needed to make those plans and have those conversations with their children. And then also adults with dependents, where maybe the dependents had special needs, and so some considerations needed to be made for that estate planning. Some participants may find value in kind of the cohort that developed from the program, where they were able to kind of share more personal experiences, and then the individuals were able to maybe learn a little bit from each other. So we started this program in 2025, and we described it as a pilot. so we received a grant from the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences. And so we were able to offer the program at no cost for that first year. And we really we implemented some things and to help us to evaluate the program and then make any changes to it for the next year. So that first year we had 36 individuals register. We did have a wait list, but we actually capped it at 35, but we let somebody else sneak in. As I mentioned, this was offered virtually. We did have individuals from Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Predominantly, they were from South Dakota, but we did have a mix from all states. In terms of the engagement, as with any program, kind of participation drops off a little bit, but as you can see, we really kind of maintained that at least 2/3 of the participants attended all of the sessions. 18 of those 36 did participate in office hours. And then we did a post-program interview. We did that just during the pilot in order to learn really, once the program was done, is there something that we might need to change? What were some things that were really good about the program that we don't want to change, or anything like that? We did record each session, so if someone wasn't able to attend, they could watch the recording to receive that information. We did have the participants complete a pre-survey before we started, and then a post-survey that measured their knowledge of estate planning terms. We had about 19 terms related to estate planning that we asked individuals to, essentially it was the term and then definition options in order to select those. We asked them to not look up the answer because we wanted to know, what do you know today? And then we asked how their confidence level changed, and then what tasks they were completed. And those are more in the post survey. So some results from the survey. So with that knowledge portion of the survey, at the pre-test, the average score was 73%, and then in the post-test, the average score was 89.7%. So we felt pretty good about the knowledge increase in terms of understanding the terms associated with that estate planning. And then regarding their confidence level, there was an increase from the pre to the post. And we had about 5 knowledge questions or confidence questions, but there was an increase on the question about selecting a person to be your power of attorney or personal agent, and the question about their ability to locate important papers. And then, as I mentioned, we also did a post-program interview, and we asked everyone to participate in that. And we felt pretty good that we were able to interview 16 individuals. Participants found Organize This was most helpful because it combined the kind of practical tools, supportive structure, foundational education, and personalized guidance to help promote their confidence, action, and then that proactive family preparedness. Many participants did struggle to identify anything unhelpful, which is kind of nice, indicating really overall satisfaction. And some suggestions were largely focused on just kind of enhancement, more flexibility, and tailoring some of the content rather than either reducing or removing any of the program components. Regarding the tasks that individuals completed, most started conversations with family members, updated accounts, and created or reviewed their legal documents. The one thing that a lot of people did not complete was meeting with a professional, and many listed that or talked about that being something that they wanted to do, still wanted to get to, but just hadn't been able to get to yet. We asked if the participants had identified and then secured a power of attorney or a personal agent. We asked about kind of how that went. And for those who did complete that task, they said they received very receptive responses for the individuals that they talked to. But this was also a task that many participants needed to complete. And it wasn't that nobody wanted to do it, they just kind of hadn't gotten to it yet. We asked about conversations related to caregiving and end-of-life decisions. And what was interesting is individuals who had completed that task did it, or like actually talked to their parents about what their parents' plans were, rather than talking to their children about what their personal plans were. And in some cases, the conversation got started, but needed to be continued. But a few participants in that interview talked about how just starting the conversation by saying, I'm attending a program and this is some of the things that we're learning, and then kind of leading into that conversation. And then there was also definitely a perspective switch in terms of individuals having a greater awareness of what is needed for that end-of-life planning, and then shifting from just thinking about it to actually proactively doing it, and then increasing their awareness. And then we were able to gather some quotes from participants that some said, there's so much more that you need to know if something happens to you or a loved one. You can never do it in just a couple of months. It would be too overwhelming. Things were on there, and we talked about that list that I wouldn't have ever thought of, like how do you get to your email address? And the only wrong way to do it is to not do it at all. You just have to be able to start somewhere. Pass it on to Lisi.
So thanks, Lorna, for providing kind of that overview of how the program was created and where we ended up after our 2025 pilot. So the demand in 2025 was great. We ended the year with a wait list, so we definitely offered the program again virtually in 2026. We co-facilitated between SDSU and NDSU and Nebraska. We charged participants $50 to participate. That covered the cost of their binder and shipping the binder to them. We ended up with 39 registrants and 25 people on the wait list, and we continued to offer office hours to that. We also were approached by Noreen at Meade County Senior Center. She wanted to see about piloting an in-person option of the program in Meade County, and she offered to cover the cost of the binders and the printing, and then charged her members didn't have to pay a fee, but if somebody was a non-member, they had to pay a $25 fee. And we ended up with 16 registrants. For this one, we are offering office hours and the peer support. And so the Meade County Senior Center also spread over 4 quarters. The next offering for 2026 will be in July. So we are already starting to prep for our July sessions of the Organize This. And I will say there is some flexibility. You could do February if you wanted, if for some reason January didn't work, but we try to keep, that 2 months between sessions. We also had the opportunity to reach the deaf community. That one did not work out for us as well. We were going to offer it in person in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and have interpreters present to help facilitate it. But unfortunately, we only had one person to offer it or who signed up. So we're going to explore that one in 2027. We have somebody from the South Dakota DROP program who's interested in becoming trained. So our goal for 27, we would like to train facilitators to offer the program in other states. We also plan to train facilitators to offer the program across South Dakota. Ideally, we want to work with sponsored volunteers who work under an organization, say like a senior center. We may work with true volunteers in some communities that are a little bit more remote. And we do want to emphasize reaching caregivers and helping support caregivers as they are serving as a fiduciary for another adult. We want to explore options to adapt for younger audiences. because we see benefits in maybe targeting youth or young adults and kind of giving them that initial understanding of, hey, you have documents that you as an adult need to maintain. So those are some of the plans that we have going into 2027. How we marketed is we used media releases, we used social media. I sent advertisements about the program to my contacts. Lorna sent them to her contacts. Nebraska did media releases. I believe, I don't know if North Dakota did a media release. So it was a variety of different avenues that we used to market. Some of it was word of mouth. We know some caregivers or some people who heard about it, learned about it from somebody else. So the ideal facilitation for this program is a multidisciplinary team. It is beneficial to have, that agricultural economics, farm management perspective, especially as extension professionals. Those are a huge target audience for us. Caregiver support professionals, they're a great part of this multidisciplinary team, especially trying to get people to access services and support. Family resource management, a lot of this really is rooted in helping families manage their resources. And then that gerontology lifespan development. This team really creates kind of a phone a friend type structure so that, if I get a question that I can't answer, then I give it to Lorna. And we had that happen recently. Somebody signed up for office hours and they had questions about life insurance and annuities and a couple of things like that. So I just passed that right to Lorna to let her handle that. So a multidisciplinary team is super valuable. The way that we will manage true volunteers in South Dakota, they will work kind of under Lorna and myself, and then we will help guide them and address any more complex questions, because it's really about having that team of people, because one person cannot have all of the knowledge that you need to have your legal and financial ducks organized. So let's talk about the facilitator guide and the session content. So the facilitator guide will describe that 10-month program that we've been talking about today. It will outline the sessions, the goals, materials, and roles. The tools, timelines, the support strategies will be there to help participants get organized. The session content, one thing we're not going to do is necessarily make slides or handouts. We're going to give you plain text, and then you'll be able to use your own templates and whatever to put this content into a slide deck. That just makes it easier for you. It makes it easier for you to customize to your state, to customize to your community, your technology level. Maybe presentation slides don't work for your group. Maybe it would be better to make a handout that you talk through. But we want to give you the ability to make the program work for the audience that you are trying to reach. The facilitator training and certification. We're still finalizing the details of this, but we anticipate 6 to 8 hours of live virtual training over 2 days. We really are trying to mimic the Organize This model that gives participants time between sessions to reflect. We'll encourage you to use some of that reflection time to think about how you would offer this program in your state or community. We're going to offer 2 to 3 options, October 26 to 29. The cost is $100 to $150. We have a range right now because we don't know how postage is going to change, because our intention is to mail every facilitator a binder so they have that to help guide them as they prepare binders for their participants. You'll get plain text to help you develop agendas, presentation slides, or handouts. We'll give you a document that has links to some of the educational materials that align with program themes. As I said, we did not make a manual. We did not make a bunch of forms. We really drew on existing resources for this program. So for example, Montana Extension, we borrowed some of their resources about trust to include in our binder. So they'll get a binder. So you'll get that handout that's got some information about the potential inserts that you could use. We're not saying you have to use those inserts. If your state has a publication about a power of attorney, then you can use that publication about power of attorney. The refresher training, we're trying to figure out what's going to make sense. I mean, a key thing with this program is we are not to provide legal advice. We are not to review legal documents. That is not what we do on this program. So there may be a refresher training that kind of helps updates about the program and also just drive home about, what our roles and responsibilities are. Licensing fee, my attorney's got to look at our materials to determine if anything merits a licensing fee, but I also told her, the goal of this program is to not make it a burden for others to take and use. Kind of the expectations for the facilitators, how we envision this year to go when we offer it in 27. The facilitators, one facilitator can manage about 10 to 12 participants. The minimum cohort size is 6 to 8 participants. As the cohort size grows, you need more facilitators. So when we offered it with over 30, we had 3 facilitators. And that's where, the burden really goes up, because if you're doing office hours, more participants means more office hours time, more binders to build. So that's where that time really comes up. So what we expect from you this year in October, you would complete our facilitator training, any onboarding, and select the schedule to offer the program. As I said, we're looking for a January, February 2027 launch, and then having those sessions about every 3 months throughout 2027. In November, December, you will have to prepare your binders, market the program, and then manage participant registration. Throughout 2027, you create your slides or worksheets for the live educational sessions. You offer sessions, you offer office hours, and then you do peer support. You use email, text message, or phone to maintain contact with participants between sessions. And then you help support data collection activities to aid in the program refinement. So that's kind of the vision that we have for how 2027 will look. There will likely be an MOA process for states who take it, and I imagine it'll be pretty low impact about how you use it. It might include some agreements around, hey, help us collect some data so we can evaluate the program. But I don't anticipate that we're going to ask for data from your participants per se, but maybe from you to give us feedback about what it's like. So it's good to talk about the kind of resources that you need to offer the program. And I think it's also helpful to highlight year 1 is kind of your heavy lift. Once your slideshows are built, once you've got your handouts picked for your binders, once you got your agendas made, it's a little bit lower impact. But that first year, there is going to be a little bit of additional prep work that you have to do. So the resources, you got to communicate. Really, what we do and organize this is try to provide that support so that people actually follow through and get things done. So whether you're following up by email, text message, or phone, you got to communicate with your participants regularly. You need technology. So if you're going to do it virtually, you need internet, you need a meeting platform, you need a presentation software. You're going to need to print materials. You're going to need binders. You're going to need dividers. You might need pens, paper, that kind of stuff. When it comes to offering the program in person, you need a meeting space that fits your group size, as well as projector screen. And depending, you may need a microphone, depending on your room. And then there's that staffing time and cost. I mean, there's the staff time to offer the program. We do have some estimates. I mean, we think over the full year, the program is going to take you 45 to 60 hours is what we say, between offering sessions, prepping, office hours, peer support, about that many hours. But that's spread over 10 months. So I don't get too overwhelmed. That is spread over 10 months. There could be travel, printing and postage, just depending. So when we offer it virtually, we mail binders to participants. And we do feel that printed material serves great value for participants, and postage. Like I said, year 1 can be the heaviest lift. And now, adapting for your audience state. We really want you to keep that consistent structure where you have the program offered 4 times and there's space between sessions. Lorna and I have explored the idea. Maybe, if you're dealing with a 20-something audience, maybe it doesn't have to be spread over 10 months because they don't have their finances and stuff likely is not quite as complex as somebody who's 40 and older. But by and large, we really want that time between sessions to give people the opportunity to write goals, work on goals, talk to family, just do all the things. And then you have to facilitate the discussions about goal progress and barriers during each session. So you can adapt the content and the examples to fit your location and audience. Definitely use local resources. Curate educational materials from organizations in your state or your community. We did not see the purpose in making a whole bunch of publications because there's so much stuff existing out there. So really, you can work this into your existing resources. I think the only thing we really want you to use as is our checklist. That checklist that we introduce during session 1 that lists the different types of documents and information that a person needs to organize for their fiduciary. Beyond that, the rest of it is pretty flexible in like where you get the materials to provide education to the participants. There's some flexibility in the timing of each session depending on audience. I think that time between sessions is an important part of this program. So yeah, you might be able to shorten it up a little bit, but I still would encourage you to have some time that way people can think and process. Because one of our participants one time said, I can only work on this stuff for an hour, you know. And I think for some people that is such a huge barrier, is just how emotionally trying it is to think about incapacity and death. So that would be my caution is, yes, there's flexibility, but we do see value in giving people time between sessions to work and process. So how do you sign up for facilitator training? So registration has not opened yet, but we have an interest form on our website where you can put your name and contact information. And then when we open registration in August, I will contact you and let you know. The deadline for registration will be October 11th, so we have time to prepare and mail you binders. You can also send me an email or complete that registration form. I highly encourage, check out our program page. That can show you some of the different web pages that we've made for our participants. And that's one thing you may find. You might have to make a couple resources for yourself. For example, how to replace important documents in your state. If you have an emergency like preparedness program with Extension, they may already have that document for you. But that's an example of a document you might have to make yourself. So our contact information is on the screen. I'm going to leave that here for a second. One thing that I think is worth commenting, we kind of tried to do a self-study option. And so that's why the checklist is there on the website. If somebody doesn't need a 10-month program to support them, they can go to our resource page and just download that checklist. Because not everyone wants that kind of support. So that is available, but these are some of the resources, like we talk about clear handwriting and why clear handwriting matters. Tribal land transfer is a big deal in South Dakota, so we have a publication, an article that talks about that. So this is our page. The training and certification link is there.
Yeah, so we did create some information. One of the things replacing legal and financial documents in South Dakota. We did, there is one written for North Dakota and one for Nebraska. So when participants register, we make sure we, get the right ones depending on where they're from, because there's a little bit of variation in terms of, where you're going to find that depending on the state. We did hope to have more individuals who maybe we're going to deal with the tribal land transfer or the reservation land. We did have one participant in our pilot program in 2025 who that was a topic of interest for them. We don't have anyone here this year, but that's an article that I updated. Essentially, Montana in their estate planning documents had a similar article and I updated it for South Dakota. A lot of people are really confused about trusts and whether or not they need a trust. And so that's why we developed that article about that. And then we really encourage people to, check their credit reports, but then also freeze their credit. As I know there's been some issues when someone passes away, and if their name gets published in a paper or obituary, then sometimes there can be some risk about identity theft. So we wanted to make sure we encourage people to freeze their credit. We talked a lot about how to leave information for someone to be able to get into your accounts after or when they needed to. And that's why those office hours are really important, because there's so many for instances, like, and there's so much variation in people's situation and experiences. So we were able to kind of address some of those really specific situations, but just helping people understand that it's important to leave things in a way that makes sense to somebody else. Like the way I have my things organized makes sense to me, but if I show it to somebody else, are they going to understand kind of what my process is or how I have things organized, so that they can actually get access to the important stuff?
I think that's an important point. That's one of the things that we always talk about when we do estate planning or later life, end of years kind of planning, is that each plan will be unique to the individual, because we all have different family situations and different assets and different financial situations. So that is a really good point. I wanted to encourage everyone today, and I think both Lorna and Lisi mentioned that the binders that they put together are curated for the most part, and please check your local resources. I know we've had on Jenny Abel and her crew did have a program called Plan Ahead that has a lot of these similar documents in it, and you can find that. We have that video recorded. You can watch that in our archives. And also, if you remember last fall, we had a group of people on talking, I think the session was titled Let's Talk About Dying. And instead of actual resources for participants, that was information about having these kinds of conversations. And I know in Arkansas, we have our estate planning basics program materials. So check your local resources. I'll be sharing more information about their training as that comes available. So thank you for coming today and sharing this program and letting everyone know about the upcoming training that you're offering there. We're excited to announce that we're going to be partnering with Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Many of you remember Jill Wheeler and Lynn Harrelson and our friends from CFPB, and they have a couple of new things they're launching and are sharing those, excited to share those with extension educators. So look for those. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time on the Financial Security Webinar Series.
Thanks, everybody.